Hello, my name is Pastor Kris Kollar. I'm the pastor of Pleasant Valley Lutheran Church near Malabar Farm State Park and St. Paul Lutheran Church in Lucas, Ohio. Greetings. We're reading through the Bible with commentary. We are in the book of Esther, one of the most fun books to read because it's a story, and it's the story of an orphan girl who ends up becoming the queen of Persia, and then a dreaded person, Haman, decides that he doesn't want to he's disrespected by Mordecai, Esther's uncle, and Haman doesn't want to just destroy Mordecai, he wants to destroy all of Mordecai's people. Oops, that would include Queen Esther. So it is figured out. Haman ends up dead. You have to listen to the previous sessions to hear all of the details on that. But before he had died, he had made an unchangeable command that all of the Jewish people could be hunted down and killed and their stuff taken on a certain day. So what are we going to do about this? So let's hear the rest of the story of Esther, chapter 8. On that day, King Ahasuerus gave to Queen Esther the house of Haman, the enemy of the Jews. And Mordecai came before the king, for Esther had told him what he was to her. So now Esther now owns Haman's house and all his stuff, and has made the connection between Mordecai, who was honored. In our previous session, we heard about Mordecai being honored, and now Esther has said, and this is my uncle. Then the king took off his signet ring, which he had taken from Haman, and gave it to Mordecai. So Esther set Mordecai over the house of Haman. Verse 3, Then Esther spoke again to the king. She fell at his feet, weeping and pleading with him to avert the evil design of Haman the Agagite and the plot that he had devised against the Jews. The king held out the golden scepter to Esther, and Esther rose and stood before the king. So we read earlier that you cannot just go in when the king is in there without permission, without being requested for you to come. If you just show up, then he could have you killed, or he could extend the scepter, which is what he does in this case. So once again, she has shown up in his space and said, please, I have a request. Only last time it was banquet and then the request. This time she goes directly to it. So we're in the middle of verse 5. She said, If it pleases the king, and if I have won his favor, and if the thing seems right before the king, and I have his approval, let an order be written to revoke the letters devised by Haman, son of Hammedatha, the Agagite, which he wrote giving orders to destroy the Jews who are in all the provinces of the king. For how can I bear to see the calamity that is coming on my people? Or how can I bear to see the destruction of my kindred? Verse 7, Then King Ahasuerus said to Queen Esther and to the Jew Mordecai, See, I have given Esther the house of Haman, and they have hanged him on the gallows because he plotted to lay hands on the Jews. You may write as you please with regard to the Jews in the name of the king, and seal it with the king's ring. For an edict written in the name of the king and sealed with the king's ring cannot be revoked. So she's like, can we just revoke this whole thing? And he's like, nope, we can't revoke it, but here's the ring. You can write up whatever you want to write up and send it out. And that cannot be revoked either. Verse 9, The king's secretaries were summoned at that time in the 3rd month, which is the month of Sivan, and on the 23rd day, and an edict was written according to all that Mordecai commanded, to the Jews and to the satraps and the governors and to the officials of the provinces from India to Ethiopia, 127 provinces, to every province in its own script, and to every people in its own language, and also to the Jews in their script and their language. Because it's the Persian Empire, they've conquered many peoples, and so what do you have? So you have governors that know the language of the area, who are ruling any given area and their language. So you have to have translators, which is one of the reasons why some of the Jewish people were in positions where they needed people who could speak their Hebrew. Verse 10, He wrote letters in the name of King Ahasuerus and sealed them with the king's ring and sent them by mounted couriers riding on fast steeds spread from the royal herd. By these letters the king allowed the Jews who were in every city to assemble and defend their lives, to destroy, to kill, and to annihilate any armed force of any people or province that might attack them, with their children and women, and to plunder their goods, on a single day throughout the provinces of King Ahasuerus, on the 13th day of the 12th month, which is the month of Adar. A copy of the writ was to be issued as a decree in every province and published to all the peoples, and the Jews were to be ready on that day to take revenge on their enemies. So the couriers, mounted on their swift royal steeds, hurried out, urged by the king's command. The decree was issued in the citadel of Susa. So they cannot revoke what Haman did. They can make a new decree. The Jews are allowed to band together. They're allowed to defend themselves. And if they're attacked, they're allowed to take the plunder from the people that they defeat. So it's not just that they have to be given up for slaughter. And it's being sent out all over the kingdom. And of course, it's going to take a little while for some of the message to get places. So they're sending them out on royal steeds. My goodness, I have a frog in my throat. Verse 15. Then Mordecai went out from the presence of the king, wearing royal robes of blue and white, with a great golden crown and a mantle of fine linen and purple, while the city of Susa shouted and rejoiced. For the Jews there was light and gladness, joy and honor, in every province and in every city. Wherever the king's command and all his edict came, there was gladness and joy among the Jews, a festival and a holiday. Furthermore, many of the peoples of the country professed to be Jews, because of the fear of the Jews had fallen upon them. Chapter 9. Now in the 12th month, which is the month of Adar, on the 13th day, when the king's command and edict were about to be executed, on the very day when the enemies of the Jews hoped to gain power over them, but which had been changed to a day when the Jews would gain power over their foes, the Jews gathered in their cities throughout the provinces of King Ahasuerus to lay hands on those who had sought their ruin, and no one could withstand them, because the fear of them had fallen upon all peoples. All the officials of the provinces, the satraps and the governors and the royal officials, were supporting the Jews, because the fear of Mordecai had fallen upon them. For Mordecai was powerful in the king's house, and his fame spread throughout all the provinces as the man Mordecai grew more and more powerful. So the edicts have come out. There's two. First, that people can attack the Jews. The second one, that the Jews can defend themselves. But obviously, many people go according to the political winds. And the political winds, Mordecai is Jewish. Mordecai is powerful. We're going to support the Jewish people. We're going to go on that side and not the other side. Verse 5. So the Jews struck down all their enemies with the sword, slaughtering and destroying them, and did as they pleased to those who hated them. In the citadel of Susa, the Jews killed and destroyed 500 people. They killed Parshandatha, Dalphon, Apatha, Poratha, Adalia, Aradatha, Paramashta, Arhisai, Aradai, Vezetha, the 10 sons of Haman, son of Hammedatha, the enemy of the Jews. But they did not touch the plunder. So they're all about revenge, but they're not about taking all the money. Verse 11. That very day the number of those killed in the citadel of Susa was reported to the king. The king said to Queen Esther, in the citadel of Susa the Jews have killed 500 people, and also the 10 sons of Haman. What have they done in the rest of the king's provinces? Now, what is your position? Petition, it shall be granted you. And what further is your request? It shall be fulfilled. Esther said, if it pleases the king, let the Jews who are in Susa be allowed tomorrow also to do according to this day's edict, and let the 10 sons of Haman be hanged on the gallows. So the king commanded this to be done. A decree was issued in Susa, and the 10 sons of Haman were hanged. So for the Jewish people to be hanged on a tree is considered to be cursed. It is very shameful. It is very bad. So it doesn't matter that they're already dead. Let's make it even worse by hanging them up. The Jews who were in Susa gathered also on the 14th day in the month of Adar, and they killed 300 persons in Susa, but they did not touch the plunder. Verse 16. Now the other Jews who were in the king's provinces also gathered to defend their lives, and gained relief from their enemies, and killed 75,000 of those who hated them, but they laid no hands on the plunder. This was on the 13th day of the month of Adar. On the 14th day they rested, and made that day of feasting and gladness. Verse 18. But the Jews who were in Susa gathered on the 13th day and on the 14th, and rested on the 15th day, making that a day of feasting and gladness. Therefore the Jews of the villages who live in the open towns hold the 14th day of the month of Adar as a day for gladness and feasting, a holiday on which they send gifts of food to one another. So this whole book, the book of Esther, is telling the story of why do we have this festival. We have a festival where we celebrate and rejoice and give presents to one another. Verse 20. Mordecai recorded these things and sent letters to all the Jews who were in the provinces of King Ahasuerus, both near and far, enjoining them that they should keep the 14th day of the month of Adar, and also the 15th day of the same month, year by year, as the days in which the Jews gained relief from their enemies, and as the month that they had been turned from them from sorrow to gladness, from mourning into a holiday, that they should make them days of feasting and gladness, days for sending gifts of food to one another and presents to the poor. So the Jews adopted as a custom what they had begun to do, as Mordecai had written to them. So a 2-day festival, the festival of Purim. Verse 24. Haman, son of Hammedatha, the Agagite, the enemy of all the Jews, had plotted against the Jews to destroy them, and had cast pur, that is, the lot, to crush and destroy them. But when Esther came before the king, he gave orders in writing that the wicked plot that he had devised against the Jews should come upon his own head, and that he and his sons should be hanged on the gallows. Therefore these days are called Purim, from the word pure. This is because of all that was written in this letter, and of what they had faced in this matter, and of what had happened to them. The Jews established and accepted as a custom for themselves and their descendants and all who joined them, that without fail they would continue to observe these 2 days every year, as it was written, and at the time appointed. These days should be remembered and kept throughout every generation, in every family, province, and city, and these days of Purim should never fall into disuse among the Jews, nor should the commemoration of these days cease among their descendants. Verse 29. Queen Esther, daughter of Abihail, along with the Jew Mordecai, gave full written authority, confirming this second letter about Purim. Letters were sent wishing peace and security to all the Jews, to the 127 provinces of the kingdom of Ahasuerus, and giving orders that these days of Purim should be observed at their appointed seasons, as the Jew Mordecai and Queen Esther enjoined on the Jews, just as they had laid down for themselves and for their descendants regulations concerning their fasts and their lamentations. The command of Queen Esther fixed these practices of Purim, and it was recorded in writing. So the Jewish people have all the laws, and they have the 3 great festivals that they go down to Jerusalem for. Go up. It was always up. Jerusalem is always up. It's on a hill. They go up to Jerusalem for Passover, Sukkoth, and I should know the other one. Why am I drawing a blank? Pentecost. So 2 harvest festivals, Sukkoth and Pentecost, and a spring festival, Passover. Chapter 10. King Ahasuerus laid tribute on the land and on the islands of the sea, all the acts of his power and might, and the full account of his high honor of Mordecai, to which the king advanced him. Are they not written in the annals of the kings of Media and Persia? For Mordecai the Jew was next in rank to King Ahasuerus, and he was powerful among the Jews and popular with his many kindred, for he sought the good of his people and interceded for the welfare of all his descendants. And that is the end of the very fun book to read, Esther. Next session, we will begin a not so fun book, although in some ways it's interesting and an interesting book, the book of Job, which is about suffering, and it asks the question, the fancy theological term I have for you today, and I'll say again in the next session, is theodicy, the problem with suffering on the earth. Why does God allow pain and suffering, and how does that happen? Why do good things happen to bad people, and why do bad things happen to good people? But that's tomorrow. That's the next session. For right now, we're wrapping up the book of Esther, a wonderful book. At no point does the word God appear, and yet all the way through there's this sense of fasting, praying, turning toward God, and also doing what they can. And I always say it's a very good thing to do what we can, to pray and trust God, ask God to work, and then also to whatever it is that we are able to do, get up and go do the thing that we're able to do, which is one of those many both ands. It's both trust God and do the work. It's both and. What else can we say from Esther? It is good to have days of festival and rest. It is good to have days that are different and days of rejoicing. I love that the tradition is to share food with one another and to give gifts to the poor. And it's not just gifts to one another, it's gifts to the poor, which when we here in the United States do Christmas, there is a certain amount of, we give gifts, way too many gifts to each other, but it's also very traditional, at least for a lot of the people I know, that they're going to also give a gift to poor children, poor families, that they're going to get an angel tree or a name of a family, and they're going to buy gifts for that family. Perhaps we should be even more in a sense of trading food at days like Christmas and giving gifts to the poor, not just like a Christmas gift to the child, but a gift to the entire family of sustenance, food, money, support to the poor, which is one of the beautiful things about the Old Testament law. It is designed to be relatively flat. There were people who were landowners and people who were poor, but the ones who were at the top were not supposed to exploit the ones at the bottom, and they're supposed to be sharing and giving alms and taking care of, and the priests are supposed to be helping take care of the people at the bottom. And so there wasn't this huge gap between the rich and the poor because of the way it was set up. People don't really talk about that very much, but it's one of the coolest things about the Old Testament and the law in the Old Testament. And the purpose is to really protect women, orphans, widows, children, I already said, women who are widows, children who are orphans, strangers who are aliens or immigrants or just any kind of outcast person on the edge of society. That Jewish Torah was designed to help those people, to look out for those people, to take care of the people on the edges of society. And we too are called to do that. Jesus also, there's many things that Jesus never talked about. One of the things that he did talk about is we are to do the work of the kingdom, do the work that the Torah calls us to care for widows, orphans, strangers. So we have to have faith. It is by grace we are saved, but having been saved, we are expected to do what we can to build God's kingdom and to take care of the people who need taken care of. And now may the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord make his face shine upon you and be gracious unto you. May the Lord look at you with favor and give you peace. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Go in peace. Like, subscribe, comment. We will see you again next time. Thanks for being here.